And 3, 2, 1, and we're live. David was a previous guest, and he was explaining how he views the world and how intricate the details can be and the different colors. And for a lot of people, we don't even notice those things. We don't think about it. We're just about the next movie coming out, the next Netflix show, and we don't take time to notice the details that artists are willing to take the time and show you. Because I've had people see art and go, well, that's just like a stool by a barn. Like, what is that? And it's like, but that's telling us, like, that's where we're from. And that's taking something that we don't even pay attention to, and we kind of skip, and giving it the time that it deserves. And I liked this analogy that children kind of remind us of that, and they'll slow down and they'll point out the stool and they'll be like, I don't and they'll play with it, and you'll be like, that's so much fun. And this kid's having so much fun with a box, and we're looking at it as just a box, but it's so much more depending on your perspective. And I think having you on to be able to share how Chilliwack has developed its art and the value and the details in behind it, how the cultural center came about, is so valuable for us to understand this pillar in our community.
I sort of like to look at a group of kids, and there's a bunch of kids that really love sports. There's a bunch of kids that are involved in ballet or in this, that, and the other thing. But I think in a lot of cases, the kid that gravitates towards drawing and painting and creating visual arts, there's not as much for them, and it's not as celebrated. You look around and, you've got this sports team and that sports team. And I think one of my priorities in dealing with the Public Art Committee and anything to do with the arts in Chilliwack is to bring that piece for those kids, so those kids don't feel disenfranchised. The artsy kids are always the geeky loser kids. I don't believe that. But, the perception quite often is, well, that kid can't play sports, so they're trying to put him into the arts, right? Well, that's not fair. That's not right. We all have our own individual gifts to bring. And I think in a community that is growing and thriving, you need to celebrate all of the aspects of it. So we have amazing sports fields. We have amazing trails. We have the Cultural Centre, where people can go and see the performing arts. And if you're a young girl or a young boy who's into dance or theater, or I look at the Simpson kids, Jackie Simpson and Scott Simpson, their kids were always into the arts and performing arts and incredibly talented. And if that Cultural Centre had not been there, there wouldn't have been that avenue for them to excel. Like one of their sons now is a recognized artist that's, I think he's selling a lot of his works. And the daughter, I'm not sure where she's working now. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, but they're both pursuing that, those abilities. And unless you have a community that offers all of those things, then the people in our community that would excel and find a life that is just so amazingly fulfilling would never have those opportunities as kids at the time when they are sort of figuring out what they want to do. The arts has always been a huge part of my life. Even though I didn't pursue it, I decided that I liked to make the yummy money at the telephone company and have a life that was solid and whatever. I always had other things that I pursued. And living in Vancouver, it did give me that opportunity. So I'm glad that we have that now here. And I think it's growing all the time. There always needs to be opportunities for every segment of society.
I completely agree. And for things like the Chilliwack Mural Festival and the art that was put up, it reminds us of the story that we have underlying our community that's so important. And it can, once you see the murals, you're like, oh, this is amazing. Who is this person? Why was it done? And then it pulls you in and it reminds you of the value of the cultural center, where some people go, well, what's practical about like drawing a picture?
What a waste of money.
Yeah.
What a waste of money putting all that money into a cultural center. There's only a certain percentage of the population that uses it. Well, there's only a certain percentage of the population that uses the sports fields. Yeah. But anyways, going back, I agree. And going back to the Mural Festival and any other kind of public art. First of all, I have to say huge kudos to Amber and also, all the other initiatives that we have taken to bring murals and public art. And, we did the Canada 150 thing where it was a mosaic of all sorts of young artists and old. And I have a little mosaic in there. One of mine is in there. And, every time you do something like that, the most important thing that does is, number one, it recognizes that art is valuable. And number two, it makes people stand there and think. Like, even if you're not someone who wants to be an artist or really understands art, you stand there and you think, like, some of them, not any of the ones that we have downtown, but, with art, you look at it and you think, oh, I wonder what that's about, and, it might seem really odd to you. Like, just to digress for a second, I spent, I don't know, it was 3 weeks, I think, with the University of the Fraser Valley was doing a trip to the Biennale in Venice, which is an art festival from all over the world. And I went with them on this art study tour a couple years ago. And it was just, we stayed in a monastery. It was, very bare bones kind of thing, but they had arranged for us to get into all these incredible exhibits and things. And there was so many things that even I, as an artist, looked at and went, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? But it is really, art is really meant to invoke kind of feelings of interest and wonder and all sorts of things. Like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard people say, well, my kindergarten kid could have painted that. Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that the artist had a message there. So what is the message that they're trying to convey? Or what was it that appealed to them about that? And it's not really quite that simple. But a lot of people just kind of don't understand art and think that it's kind of a waste. So,
well, I completely agree. And it's that lack of humility of like, I've never seen this before. I don't know the artist. So maybe I don't know something and maybe I need to be patient and wait for more information or the artist to walk by and explain their idea behind it. Maybe I don't know everything I need to know. And I think that people can lack that, especially when so many things are laid out for us, like good TV shows. For the most part, they tell you exactly what you need to know, and they'll repeat it in 3 different scenes.
Yeah, and what you want to, what they want you to think.
Exactly.
That's the thing about art. Everybody thinks something differently about it, and what a great exercise for the brain. Because as you say, quite often it's so totally spelled out for us that it requires no effort, and art is really good for that because it makes you think about things. It makes you wonder.
Absolutely. So what has that development been like in Chilliwack? Because the cultural center did arise. What was that process like to get that developed?
Well, I have to say that that was Pat Clark, who was a city councillor at the time. And I came on in 2008 and they were breaking ground. So I did not see the early phases of it. And I really can't take any credit for it, except for the fact that I have been a huge supporter of it, and I have been on their board, although Jeff Shields is doing it now. But it was, it was a coming together of different arts and cultural groups in Chilliwack that needed a space. And so there was some money that everybody sort of put in, and they were going to be like the premier kind of starters of it. And they, over time, it's kind of morphed and, program. And we have Michael Cade, who does, the programming and that sort of stuff there. But, to sort of answer your question, I think at the time, and I remember, I was working for the chamber at the time and watching the pushback from the community. We're not a large enough community to have this. Well, I think, first of all, we've grown hugely. And I think that it's been proven that it's, a really great thing to have in the community. And hopefully the people that didn't want it at the time realize the value that it has brought to us. I mean, there's been lots of great shows and things that have happened there, but it's also opened the door for kids to learn how to play different instruments. There's all these different rooms. They can do pottery, they can do all sorts of different forms of arts. And that's what it was meant to do. And Pat Clark really pushed for that, and she worked really hard, and she managed to bring in some money for it, and we got some money. I think there was some sort of government, like provincial government involvement as well, but I can't really say for sure because all of those kinds of things were worked out before I came along. But I think it was probably a big part of why I wanted to go on council was the fact that I saw that, there was room to create more of a multicultural community, and by that I don't mean just different nationalities, but also different interests and passions. Right?
Absolutely. And I think that that's so important because there's so many people who feel disconnected from the community and need a spot where they can go and practice drawing, even though they're not expert drawers, and paint and develop friendships. And I don't think that we recognize that enough because we all have our social groups and we're supposed to stay within them kind of attitude that going out, like my mom's had an opportunity to utilize the cultural center and make friends and meet people and use the library and learn new skills and learn to crochet and do these things in the community that allows her to expand her social network so she doesn't feel so alone during a pandemic. Like we couldn't have expected this coming, but it's so valuable to build those connections so you don't feel alone in your community. And a lot of people move here and they're looking for how do I get involved? And that's such an excellent place to start. So can you tell us about some of your favorite art pieces? Is it the visual arts? Is it music? What inspires you?
I think probably the favorite art piece that we've had in town for me was Pencil Fingers. Goodness, he used to be on my art committee too, and I've forgotten what his actual real name. But the piece at Five Corners.
Yes,
that was temporary.
Yeah,
and it was always meant to be temporary. And when he did it, I just loved it so much that I immediately regretted that it was temporary.
Yeah.
I wish we had put it somewhere where it would still be there. There's lots of course, it's covered up now. There's lots of photographs of it, and there's lots of opportunity maybe to put something else somewhere. The other one that I love too is the new Vetter Bridge. I think it really embraces our Indigenous community and the history and the different, like, it was so well thought out. Like David Jimmy, when he and the artist that he worked with, the fact that all the paddles represent different groups within our community, and the way that they face even has a meaning. And I don't profess to understand entirely what all the nuances are of it, but I think it's incredibly beautiful. It was also quite expensive, and I wish we had millions of dollars to do all sorts of really amazing things like that, because the more expensive projects give you more leeway in how fabulous you can make it.